Mr. Hedler-Gaudet, the administration has systematically undermined government oversight. The president has fired more than a dozen inspectors general, not for any cause, but seemingly just in retaliation for doing their jobs and to block unwanted investigations. President Trump has defunded the Council of the Inspectors General on Integrity and Efficiency. He's removed independent leadership at the Office of Special Counsel and Office of Government Ethics, blockading whistleblowers and numerous investigations. What is your assessment, Mr. Hedler-Gaudet, of the Trump administration's apparent systematic opposition to internal oversight mechanisms in the federal government?
Thank you, Ranking Member Raskin. My assessment is that the last year or so has been one of the most anti-oversight, anti-accountability periods that I've witnessed in our federal government. And I think the things you laid out, as well as others, are the sort of proof in the pudding there. And I think, speaking of things that should be giving us pause and raising red flags, that should all be giving us serious pause and raising serious red flags about how seriously people who claim to take oversight, accountability, fraud, how seriously do they actually take it?
There's been a lot of attention given to Donald Trump's extraordinary use of the pardon power, as in the pardon of violent insurrectionists and cop beaters. But there's also been a forgiveness of $1.5 billion in restitutionary fines that various people had to pay. And a lot of them are fraudsters. The DOJ in Trump's first term brought bank fraud and tax evasion charges against reality TV stars Todd and Julie Chrisley. They were convicted in 2022. They owed more than $22 million in restitution to taxpayers and to their victims. But then Trump suddenly, inexplicably pardoned them and forgave all of the money that they were supposed to be paying back to their victims. Todd Chrisley bragged publicly about his get-out-of-jail-free card, jubilantly exclaiming, "The feds got effed." Let me give you one other example. Trump, on April 23rd, issued a pardon for Paul Walchuk, a former nursing home exec who pleaded guilty to multiple tax crimes. What he was doing was taking millions of dollars from the nurses and orderlies and doctors who worked for him at his facilities, took more than $10 million that way, instead of giving it to the IRS for their taxes. He used the money to buy a $2 million yacht and to pay for high-end jet travel and to go shopping at Bergdorf Goodman and Cartier. Well, he was sentenced to 18 months in prison for stealing his employees' tax withholdings, and he was ordered to pay his employees back $4.4 million for the money he looted from their accounts. So he's gonna have to pay that back, but then he got his mom to go to a glitzy fundraising dinner for Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago, and she paid $1 million for her ticket. Then, right after Trump was inaugurated in his second term, Walchuk petitioned for a presidential pardon, arguing that he was the victim of political retaliation because they were Trump supporters. And what do you know? President Trump issued a complete pardon with forgiveness of all of the financial fines and restitution that Mr. Walchuk was gonna have to pay back to his workers, the nurses and doctors and orderlies. So that was forgiven. That was $4 million taken away from the victims of a fraud and given back to the perpetrator of the fraud. Okay, now, if we had all day, we could go on all day with this because that's how their pay-to-play pardon system works. What does this do to our efforts to root out fraud and corruption systematically in the government and in crimes in different industries?
I think it provides a perverse incentive structure. I opened my statement by saying that we all have an obligation and a responsibility to do what we can to prevent fraud and to hold perpetrators of fraud accountable. But that last bit, holding a perpetrator of fraud accountable, perhaps via conviction, doesn't mean much if all one needs to do is contribute to the right Uber PAC or attend the right fundraiser, and suddenly that accountability and that conviction is wiped away, including the financial restitution you mentioned. So those kinds of actions are at direct cross purposes with any effort to promote a broader, more systemic approach to rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse.